Hello there. While the UK teeters on the brink of water and energy shortages, the two just get on with net zero. We all know that both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are engaged in an almost personal battle to be seen as the most green person on the planet. But while they're doing that, the country and us, the people that live in it, will be the ones that ultimately suffer. And now that the Labour leader has come under fire for declaring that he will not be issuing any new drilling licences in the North Sea when he gets his feet under the desk at number 10, he's clarifying his position in the face of criticism. And that criticism is that without new fields, he won't be able to bridge the gap between oil and gas and these new renewables that never seem to be able to cut the mustard. But get this. What Starmer has said is that if the current PM issues new licences between now and the next general election, then he, Starmer, won't close them afterwards. So one assumes then that he won't oppose those new oil fields in the first place. Now, any right-minded PM would be issuing as many North Sea licences as it takes to keep the lights on and the UK energy security situation on a firm footing. But what if Rishi decides to not play the statesman and play politics instead? He could stop issuing licences to please just stop oil. Let Keir Starmer walk in and watch as the whole country implodes. Then Starmer would blame Sunak, who would blame Boris, while all the usual lefty EU supporting stupid suspects would blame Brexit. And if Sunak does decide to issue more licences, Starmer can say he wouldn't have done it, but hey, now they're open. So will Sunak play the statesman and help Starmer keep warm by signing up to new licences now? And will Starmer play the statesman when he's finally at the crunch point in the latter half of his term in office, when he realises the whole net zero thing is going to take a lot longer than he thought, as well as be hugely more expensive? And it's the fault of the Tories, Labour and the Lib Dems. The last water reservoir to be built was in 1991, and the last nuclear reactor to be built was in 1994. And reservoirs and reactors take about a decade or more to get built and commissioned. Since then, we've had political game-playing squabblers infesting our politics, and people call Sunak and Starmer the grown-ups. Oh, and most of that time since 1991 was spent with us inside the European Union. Wasted time. Now, you've seen the trouble that Boris is in, and one of his gripes is that his legal team were not allowed to get involved in the case to ask questions of any witnesses. But he's not the only one with legal team problems. On the other side of the pond, it's being reported that Donald Trump is finding it hard to get legal counsel prepared to defend him, which of course draws comments that he must have an awful case. But according to the Gatestone Institute, this problem might stem from another cause, something that should worry us all. There are disturbing suggestions that among the reason lawyers are declining the case is because they fear legal and career reprisals. Yes, there is a group called the 65 Project, and Dershowitz continues his allegations. There is a nefarious group that calls itself the 65 Project that has as its goal to intimidate lawyers into not representing Trump or anyone associated with him. They have threatened to file bar charges against any such lawyers. And he points out that this could be a direct attack on the US Sixth Amendment right to legal counsel. Now, the InfluenceWatch.org website writes, "The 65 Project is a campaign targeting lawyers who aided attempts by the then-President Donald Trump and his supporters to overturn the 2020 election results. And according to that report, they used advertisements, threats of disbarment, and changing rules within the American Bar Association, ostensibly to deter future similar efforts. And it goes on to point out that critics call it one-sided. Though the 65 project claims to be bipartisan, it is not targeting any Democrat-aligned attorneys who have challenged election laws or results in the past, and is advised exclusively by Democrats and Democratic allies. Sounds pretty much par for the lefty course, don't you think? And Professor Dershowitz says in his piece that one lawyer acting for Donald Trump's co-defendant was told that his application for a judgeship may be negatively affected unless he got his client to cooperate by going against Trump. A new form of lawfare to target the legal representation of your political opponents. And self-entitled lefties will, of course, claim this is fully justified, but they would melt into a puddle if someone on the right tried the same sort of thing. And what should worry us is that what happens in the US always ends up happening over here, if it hasn't started here already. So don't take everything the UK press tells you at face value about Trump. And as I predicted, the Partygate report has not dented Boris Johnson's position at the top of the political agenda quite yet. In fact, it seems to have inflamed it. Despite the Rishi Sunak fans saying they've politically buried Boris. And Boris made another splash by becoming a columnist for the Daily Mail, which is not exactly on the lefty Christmas card list. And his immediate successor, Liz Truss, said you should never, ever write Boris off. But he's also drawn the attention of the Appointments Committee because he didn't inform them of his new Daily Mail job. He's meant to write to the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, ACOBA, prior to taking up a new appointment within 2 years of leaving Parliament. And it appears that his first piece will appear tomorrow, from what the Daily Mail calls their erudite new columnist who will be required reading in Westminster and across the world. With Mail Online tweeting, "We are delighted to announce Boris Johnson as our new columnist. Famed as one of the wittiest and most original writers in the business, Boris's column will appear in the Daily Mail every Saturday, and you'll be able to get a preview on Mail Online and the Mail Plus on Fridays." As usual, Boris off doing his own thing and rocking the boat again. The committee concerned has promised to write to Mr. Johnson to gain some clarity from him. Always causing a stir, isn't he? And he might get a little revenge, with the Telegraph reporting that the police have received a report from a third person about the party that the Deputy Chairman of the Privileges Committee that levered him out of Parliament, Bernard Jenkin, was alleged to have attended. But given the public mood, one assumes the police might just say they've got better things to spend their time on. Then we'll know. Richard.
And then they came for me. Those words have always struck me cold. And now we live in a world where we are awaiting the state to finally come for us. We are more afraid of falling foul of the system than we are of any external national threat. I was reading today about how home repossessions are on the rise, fueled by the increase in interest rates, and they look like they're going to continue to increase. Well, there you go. It must be your fault if your house is repossessed, because if it wasn't your fault, and let's say it was the fault of the government for destroying your livelihood, capacity to pay your mortgage, and also cultivating an unstable housing market that is constantly on the precipice of collapse and destroying the economy, well, what are you going to do about it? What would you do if the government had brought down the system and your ability to pay your mortgage? What would you do if you bought a house, then lost it? Lost your life savings, and possibly, as a result, you lost your relationship after the mortgage became unaffordable to service? Well, I'll tell you what you would do. You do nothing. You might vote slightly differently in the next general election, but that would be it. You would leave that house quietly like the good citizens that you are. You wouldn't object and illegally stay in a house that the banks own, and yes, well, the banks own it, and I suppose the shareholders profit from owning your old home. Yeah, people. I wonder what people do that. Who's got investments in such things? People like politicians, possibly? Do you think they've got investments in banks? No, you would leave your own home, and you would not question it. You would not kick up a fuss, because otherwise the police would turn up at your door and take you away. It's the same reason so many people complied with the restrictions during the global health emergency. You see, we no longer live in a world where we're governed and policed by consent. No, we are governed by fear. Unless you're from Just Stop Oil, that is, because then you can do whatever you want. You don't have to be frightened of falling foul of the law there. But yes, we live in fear of our governments and what they will do to us should we step out of line, and should they claim the roofs over our heads and object to the immoral system where you work most of your life for a pension and retirement, a pension and retirement you may very well never see. Whilst those that rule us and decide the rules which we have to obey, they live in opulence. And they probably own shares in banks that own your home. And no matter how financially secure we are, or we think we are, with our material trinkets and incomes and pensions, it can all be taken away at the press of a button. Oh, they are coming for us. They're coming for us all one day. Or do you think that the way that the world is being configured and structured, do you think there is an outcome where you remain free and maintain your own personal wealth? You might believe the state has no reason to do that to you and to take away your personal wealth and your assets. But I bet a few years ago, you never thought the state would lock you in your houses and say you have to take dangerous, mandated things for your arm. I have to be careful what I say. People are losing their homes, and the banks will eventually become our landlords. It's awful. Come on. Unless we band together now, we will not have another opportunity to have a normal life ever again. Anyway, what do you lot think about what has been discussed in this video by Jeff and I? Leave your inspirations and stupidity in the comment section below, and we will see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Enjoy your weekend.